Hey, 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 everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Real Deal Pod with Allister and Geoff. It is episode 45, and it is a Thursday, not a Wednesday, and it's warm, not cold. So, man, this is an amazing day. But as always, we've got our main man, Geoff Lee, along with us for the ride today. Geoff, buddy, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Last week we saw some snow on the ground, and today we are starting to see the concrete again. So is spring coming?
I have no snow around me, and it's actually funny. I went for a run this morning, and I thought
Nice.
about that. And I thought about that. I was like, last week, right? We're trucking around a little bit of ice, trying not to slip and fall over. I'm running across pavement. It is pure lush green because of the rain. No snow in sight. So it's just amazing, right? How the weather can switch in a matter of a week.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna say this, but I'm gonna regret it. That's why you know Mother Nature is a woman because she can never make up her mind.
Oh man, Geoff, you're gonna get the comments firing at us, buddy. We're gonna get in so much trouble. How's your weekend? Did you get up to doing anything fun or no?
Yeah, you know what? This weekend was well, we're almost into a new weekend, but
Right?
last weekend was fairly quiet. Wasn't anything too exciting. I'm here in Burnaby at my girlfriend's place and enjoying the city life again. And this weekend we just have some friends that we're going to be visiting and hanging out with, but fairly mellow. Actually, no. What happened last weekend? My girlfriend bought a bike, so we're going to
Nice.
start doing some gravel biking together and uh and uh and seeing how that goes. So I'm
That's
excited about
awesome.
that.
That's awesome. My weekend, I think I was saying it to you yesterday. It was busy. I didn't actually have one. I was out. I had a lot of showings on my listings throughout the weekend. I had two yesterday. I have another two today. And then I had clients also that wanted to that had me going out with them. So I know it got us to talking about whether or not we're in this slow boil, as I was saying, because it really does seem over the past 2 weeks, it's been markedly different in terms of activity than the past 6 months. And I was talking to some colleagues yesterday that were feeling the exact same thing. They were getting a whole lot more activity on their listings. They had buyers that were calling them to get out, and it was, it's really interesting with all of this uncertainty that is going on. It's caused, I think, buyers to really start looking, and especially since, like I think we mentioned before, we had 167% increase in listings in January, right? So we've gotten to this point now, I think, where buyers are coming out to see. We're not seeing offers yet. That's the one thing all of us were laughing about. We've got all this traffic, but we haven't seen the offers yet. And that's because I think we have such an abundance of inventory on the market. So it'll be interesting though to see if and when that somebody Peter pulls his finger out of the dam, so to speak, right? And if the floodwaters start coming through, it'll be interesting. It's yeah,
Yeah, I know even speaking on the mortgage side of things, I know that this year is busier than last year for the first quarter.
mhm.
That's always, I think, a good indication as far as what we might expect for our next quarter. And we're going to get into this a little bit later in our pod, but I think it's CREA projected in 2025 that housing prices were going to come up 4%. There was
Yeah,
going to be an increase of activity around, north of 8%. Um, Again, that may be better, that may be worse once we jump into this pod and talk about, tariffs and what they're going to mean to the real estate side and the mortgage side of things. Um, but yeah, I think that I'm excited about this pod because we've been talking and hearing about tariffs, and I think this is going to be a great pod just to kind of lift that fog a little bit and
God bless tariffs, Geoff. God bless them.
well, let's jump into that. Like,
Well, hold on,
you know,
hold on.
oh
Let
yeah,
me
so
do the let me
well,
get into our
I
did you
know. I'm
know
excited.
before
I'm
we jump
excited.
in there, Geoff? Because I think I've got a great one for us today. I think
Let's
I got
do
a
it.
great one. All right,
You
so
always surprise me with do you not? Because I don't know. So you
I
always
know I purposely don't tell you these. I purpose because I don't want anything to be tricky. I'm not trying to trick you to anything. I always want us to be excited about something that's coming up in our amazing province that, whether it could help an investor, help buyers, sellers, everybody around. So I always like to find these little nuggets out there. And I found an interesting one, Geoff. So, did you know that Port Coquitlam is accelerating its housing development with a $10.3 million boost from the federal government?
yeah. Yeah, and I
Correct.
think the important thing to understand on that, this is coming from the federal government, not the
Federal government.
provincial and
Yeah,
not the
not provincial.
municipal. Yeah.
Exactly. So the funding announced on February 18th by MP Ron McKinnon, good job, Ron McKinnon, aims to fast track the construction of 287 new homes, many of which will be affordable. This initiative is part of the Housing Accelerator Fund, so the HAF, which is a $4.4 billion national program designed to expedite housing projects across Canada.
So this is 287 homes?
New homes, yeah, but the city, so Port Coquitlam, has been set a target to add 2,279 new homes by July 31st of 2029.
Wow. Yeah.
So they're going to fast track 287 of those, but the target is by in 4 years now to have 2,279 new homes built in Port Coquitlam
Within the next 4 years.
within the next 4 years, which I think is outstanding. And
Yeah.
kudos to the to this HAF, this housing accelerator fund. Wonderful, 4.4 billion dollar national program to be rolled out across Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess federally speaking, that's just not here in British Columbia. I would imagine that they're putting that countrywide
Yes.
because it's a federally regulated funding. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's cool. I think it addresses some of the concerns that British Columbia and the Greater Vancouver have with housing crisis. I'm curious what affordable housing means in Port Coquitlam.
I know
Right?
it's all relative. I know it all
Yeah.
becomes relative, but anything is better than what we've got now, is what I've always said, right? Anything is better.
Yeah.
And it's funny, not to kind of sidetrack us, but we were talking about the importance of owning versus renting, right? We gave the statistics. I believe, what is it? You're worth 1.44 million at the age of 65 versus $11,900 if you're renting. And
Yeah.
if you're renting at 30 years old, I believe you were worth 400 and some odd thousand, and you were worth $44,000 or something like that if you weren't. And
A
so with that,
substantial difference. What?
it's a
Yeah.
substantial difference, right? So with that being said, we have now Vancouver, of course, right, owns the priciest rental market is Vancouver. They own the number one spot. It's sitting at, for a one bedroom, $2,550 a month, and a two bedroom averages 3,460.
Unfurnished.
Yeah, yes, unfurnished,
How much for a two bedroom?
3,460.
And how much for a two bedroom?
That was a two bedroom was 3,460. A one bedroom was 2,550. Now, Geoff,
Wow.
where you're staying, Burnaby, just leapfrogged Toronto into the number two spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Welcome to
is
British
up.
Columbia.
So one
Welcome,
bedrooms,
welcome to the Greater Vancouver area.
yeah, so one bedrooms climbed up 3% up to 2,400, and two bedrooms are also up to 3,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So
Well,
Toronto
and
dipped.
again, that
So what's interesting though, Toronto dipped by 3.4%, and Victoria slid into fourth. but they saw a slight decline in their two-bedroom pricing. So it's really interesting how over the past 4 months they're seeing the rental market and the pricing sort of shift downwards as well.
You know what else, sir? There's a little bit of a lag here. I don't know if you're getting it on your end, but
I'm getting it on yours. Yeah, I saw that too. I got it on yours. Yeah.
yeah. So I didn't actually hear what you just said because it lagged the whole way through.
Oh, did it? Oh, shoot. Okay. Well, I was talking about I was talking about how Burnaby, right, leapfrogged where you're staying. Burnaby leapfrogged Toronto. Toronto saw a decline of 3.4%, right? And then we saw Victoria. Victoria, they're in fourth, but they also saw a slight decline in their rental prices as well. And it's actually been it's been 4 months in a row now that rent across Canada has cooled.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think a few of the key factors that they've been saying has been government pushed initiatives, and they've had rental completions that have doubled since 2018, I believe it is.
Right.
Yeah,
When I hear these rental for a one bedroom to be 24 to 2,500 and a two bedroom to be up to 3,000, you might as well just buy a house. That's probably more than your mortgage payment's going to be.
that's what I'm saying. That's what we've always said, Geoff. Like I think that's one of the things that we've pounded like over and over and over again. That if you can just figure out a way to get into the market to do so, because you are in infinitely a better place.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is what we talked about in the last couple of pods as far as what our government is doing to try to get first-time home buyers in the market by using 30-year amortizations, decreasing down payments. So yeah, and again, BC or the Greater Vancouver area has always had housing issues and a shortage of housing. So good on Port Coquitlam on fast tracking these homes and getting north of 2,000 homes in its city within the next 4 years. So
Yep.
so yeah, it seems to be doing what it should be doing
Yeah.
with addressing housing. Um, but again, I just don't know how people can rent. It's just mind-blowing to me on how expensive it is.
Yeah, and I think the purposeful rentals will really start driving down because I think that takes into account what, investors, right, are charging for their properties. Whereas when you have purposeful built rental properties, the rents don't usually accelerate that high, right? Into the
Yeah,
3,000 $2,000 range, right? They're usually quite
yeah,
quite lower. So
yeah,
but let's get
yeah.
into
Good stuff.
tariffs, Geoff. Let's get into these crazy reciprocal tariffs that madman down below, that carrot bottom dumbass. Uh, yeah, let's get into this.
Well, I think it's always important. Like you hear these terms always like tariffs, tariffs. What is a tariff? Because there's a large part of people that actually don't even know what a tariff is.
Ooh, pick
So,
me,
so,
Geoff.
so Alistair, in real simple language that
Okay.
a grade five person can understand,
Okay.
what is a tariff? So everybody knows when people are talking about tariffs, what is a tariff?
Okay. Let me see if I can do this. A tariff is a tax or a duty imposed by a government on imported or exported goods. It's often used to regulate trade by making foreign products more expensive, encouraging consumers to buy domestic goods instead.
Right.
And as we know with that maniac below, they can also be used as a political tool in trade negotiations between countries.
Right. So yeah, exactly. It's a tax on goods that are leaving our country,
Yeah.
going into another country, and basically, and in the US case, trying to make everything domestic, which we both know, I think is impossible,
It
right?
is. It is.
So I think it's important to understand what is a tariff. Hopefully, we've cleared that up. Understand that as of February 4th, I believe, Donald Trump was to impose a 25% tariff on Canadian imports,
Yeah.
goods going into their country, and a 10% tariff on energy, again, going into their country.
Yeah.
And that has been delayed 30 days and to be reassessed come March 4th, I believe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, from what I hear and what I understand, Donald Trump is still towing that line that tariffs are going to be rolled into our country. And if that's the case, I think it's just really important.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? What does that mean to our real estate? What does that mean to possible mortgage rates? Because if tariffs are imposed,
Yeah.
what we're going to see is we're going to see a higher cost for goods and services that we're paying for.
Right. And so that's the one part I want to touch on for with people is the way that we as Canadians will feel the impact is with tariffs is our cost of goods. So let's say orange juice, if they put a tariff on oranges, right? Our orange juice will cost, well, not our, not, it will be the orange juice produced by, what the companies will cost more and they will offset that onto us. So
Right.
we will be charged that money. So
Right.
what will essentially happen, and this is the part that I want everybody to watch out for, is just watch when companies start bragging about record profits in the future when these tariffs are going on, because what they're going to do is not only charge us as the consumers the 25% tariff or whatever that number tariff would be, that percentage in tariff, they're also going to charge us a little bit more on top of that.
Yeah.
And that will increase their profits. So just so everybody knows, that's how we will be affected.
And we just kind of went through a season of inflation.
Yeah.
Our inflation, Canada has done a great job getting our inflation back to below that 2% level. But one of the many reasons why our inflation was north of 7%, I think it was even at 8% at one time, was the cost of goods,
Yeah.
right? Was that supply and demand. So again, if these tariffs come into effect, which I think they are going to in some way, shape, or form,
Yeah.
we are going to see a higher cost in goods. We are going to see a higher cost in services. And when that happens, again, that's going to have an impact on our inflation rate. And again, our Canadian ideal inflation rate is 2%, right? The other thing that we got to keep in mind if these tariffs get rolled in here March 4th is that any industry that's reliant on the US exports may face layoffs, which basically means there could be our unemployment rate could go up 2 to 3%.
Right.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest worry for most right now is is the unemployment that tariffs might cause.
And one of the things to understand, and we're going to get into this a little bit more, is when it comes to our prime rate here in Canada, it is not solely based, but one of the things that it's looked at if the rate is going to go higher or if the rate is going to go lower is what does our unemployment look like within our Canadian borders.
Yeah.
So, again, half full, there could be a 2 to 3% unemployment spike if these tariffs roll in. And keep in mind, folks, that if your unemployment goes down, the likelihood of your rates are going to go down with it, right? Which is a little bit of a I'm not going to say a contradiction to what we've been preaching, because before we've been preaching the cost of goods are high, the inflation rate is high. This is why your rates are going high. The other part where tariffs could come in is that our mortgage rates may go down lower because, again, of job loss, the weaken of our Canadian dollar, right? The slower economic growth, like the shrinkage of our GDP, which simply means like it measures the monetary value of final goods and services. And really, to kind of summarize it into a nutshell, is that this is going to push Canada into a recession. And if Canada goes into a recession, this can mean one of two things. This could mean a slowdown in real estate and
Yeah.
people purchasing housing,
Yeah.
or this could actually create a lower interest rate environment.
Yeah.
And this actually could boom the real estate environment, because this is very similar. I'm not going to say conversation, but similarities to when COVID came in. The world was going to stop. Well, in fact,
Yeah.
it did stop.
Yeah.
Interest rates went to all-time lows. We were worried that how is the housing market going to survive this? How is the financial world going to survive this? And we just went through the two busiest years that this country has ever seen in regards to borrowing and purchasing.
Yeah. And the
So
reason
that
for
there,
that, I was just say the reason for that is they need to stimulate the economy. When you
yeah,
have that slowdown, and the way to do that, the quickest way to do that is to churn real estate.
exactly.
Yeah.
Again, when a country is in a recession, what the Bank of Canada does is they stimulate buying by lowering interest rates.
Yeah.
So and again, we've talked about this before, is your variable rates are always affected by what's going on within our Canadian borders. So if these tariffs get rolled in, if Canada goes into a full-blown recession, we are going to see the Bank of Canada lower interest rates, the overnight lending rate, which has a direct impact on the prime rate. Some say up to 1.5% here by the end of 2025, right? The other thing to keep in mind is that when the world market, so we'll talk about the US, is in an influx. So remember too, guys, the US economy is not doing great either. Their inflation rate is north of 3%. Again, any country, ideally, the inflation rate needs to be at 2%. These tariffs are also going to hurt the US because they do not have the capabilities to manufacture domestically what they're going to be putting tariffs on.
Yeah.
And
That's the
as we,
reason why they want to annex Canada, Geoff, is because
right,
they need access to our resources. So just so everybody knows, that's the whole thing. They want to frack Canada. That is what Donald Trump's goal is to he needs Canada so that he can come in and he can basically take our resources because the United States are lacking so many. California burns down because they don't have enough water. We are the ones that supply California their water, and that's why it burns down if they don't get it. And so just not to get further into that, but that is why the US needs us.
right, as their 51st state.
Yeah, as their 51st state, those jackasses. Anyways, go on.
So back to when the US is a little bit in an influx and it is having troubles with its economy. What happens then is that people will pull out of the stock market and they will start putting their money into a safe product like bonds. And then as soon as that happens, we will also see fixed rates coming down, right? So what these tariffs really mean is that on the Canadian side, we're going to see fixed rates drop. By how much? Yet to be determined. We're going to see variable rates drop. Some economists believe 1 to 1.5% here within the next 12 months. And again, I'm always a big fan of what happens when that happens, or what happens when that actually happens based on history. The last time that our rates dropped, what happened to our housing?
It went bananas, Geoff.
It went bananas. And this is also in a time when the entire world shut down,
I know.
right?
When we didn't think really, I always remember when that shutdown happened and every realtor thought, how are we going to do our jobs? Like how literally we every one of us lost our job. How are we supposed to go in somebody's home? How are we supposed to sell somebody's home?
Yeah.
What are we going to do? And then
Yeah.
the next thing you know, you couldn't stop selling some people's homes. You couldn't stop trying to help somebody buy one.
Yeah. And again, to note, this scenario is different than the COVID scenario because our government was also handing out money like
Yes.
it was Christmas and Black Friday,
Right.
right?
Yes. Yes. They were
So
grandparents.
as an
They
economy,
were
we got
grandparents at
deeper and
Christmas.
deeper and deeper and deeper in debt. What's that?
I said they were grandparents at Christmas time.
Yeah.
Here's
So,
here's
the difference
$20,
here,
kids.
and this is the reason. And the reason why when we went through COVID and then we saw that spike in interest rates is because, we were handing out money as a country to anybody and everybody with really not a lot of control on that, right? We
None.
almost went on the good faith policy is that, hey, if you qualified for this, we're going to give it to you, right? So the environment's going to change in regards to what's going to happen if rates drop, but in my opinion, it's not going to accelerate like it did when that perfect storm of COVID hit,
Yeah.
where rates dropped, cost of goods, not the cost of goods, but goods were selling like wildfire. As a result, cost of goods went up because of the supply and demand, and really we went into a perfect storm in those COVID years, where our inflation went to well, I'm going to say all-time highs, but maybe not the all-time high. But then as a country, we needed to be responsible and claw it all back. You saw your variable rate increase 8 times in a matter of 11 months. We did very drastic things to get our inflation rate back to under 2%, which it now is.
Yeah.
But again, now with this tariff conversation, our inflation rate's going to go. But if our country does hit a recession, we're also going to see our rates decline. And again, what does that mean? To me, it means one of two things. The market's either going to slow down or the market may boom, right? What do you think?
It's a hard one. I actually think the market's going to boom. I don't, and again, I don't. I'm not a believer it's going to go COVID levels by any stretch of the imagination, but I do believe that it will boom. I'm a big believer in consumer confidence, consumer belief, and I believe that actually the more Trump does all of this stuff, the stronger we as Canadians become together.
Yeah.
Right. So it's funny. I was actually noticing it in my neighborhood taken when I went for a run, and saw so many Canadian flags hanging from people's porches, right?
Nice.
Hanging put out of the garage. And so and that's got me to thinking. I said, this is going to backfire on him. And this is like what I've said. I'm a big nationalist, right? This is amazing for Canada because what it's doing is it's getting ourselves back to our roots and understanding again that no, man, we are all here in Canada together. We are all together. We are all one together. And it's nice to see that start coming around here and a little bit of that, a little bit of the divisiveness that jackass down below has instilled in this world over the past 8 years, right? It's good that it's at least up here starting to see it dissipate and us getting back to being Canadians. And so I hope that it'll allow our governments to understand that we need to give breaks to our Canadian businesses, to encourage Canadian businesses to grow here. I encourage everybody to buy local,
Yeah.
to buy Canadian, right? I'm a big promoter of that. So that's a little bit of my soapbox when it comes to what the future holds.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. So yeah, just to kind of sum it up, I wanted to let everybody understand what is a tariff, right?
Yeah.
I wanted people to understand what tariffs are going to mean when it comes to inside of what's going on with Canada, what it's going to mean outside of our Canadian borders in the US, what this is going to mean with rates and how that's going to work. And at the end of the day, one of two things are going to happen. Either the market's going to slow down or the market's going to boom. And again, I think I'm with you. I'm with you, Allister. I think the market is going to do what it always does. It's always going to appreciate anywhere from 4 to 12%. With what's going on within our Canadian borders, I see this no different. But I also see this as an ongoing thing. It's always one thing or the other,
Yeah.
right? It's always this, that, this, that, this, that. And I've come to the realization we're always going to be going through something, right? There's always going to be a conversation as far as the market going to go up? Is the market going to go down? What's happening to interest rates? What's happening to our economy? What's happening to Canada? What's happening to the, it's always going to be, it always has been,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think this is just another thing. And yes, it's a big thing. Don't get me wrong, but it's just another thing. And you know what? 4 months from today, it's going to be another thing. So
Exactly.
again, let's just get this thing done and let's just yeah, I don't know what else to say on that.
No, well said. Let's just be Canadian, live our lives, and enjoy our life. Drown out the noise, drown out the noise, do what's best for us as Canadians and our families. And
Yeah.
that's what matters.
And I agree. I think as Canadians, I don't think this is something that we needed, but this has raised nationalism back here in Canada. Like
Yep.
people are proud to be Canadians.
Yep.
And I have this conversation with another friend of mine. Like if you take a look at most wars in the world, Canada had a huge part of winning those wars because of how strong we are as individuals. Okay,
100%.
we don't have the biggest army, we don't have the most technology, but we're fighters.
100%. 1876, we beat the United States in the only war that we had against them, and they don't teach it to their children down there. We burnt down their White House, baby.
A little bit different in 2025, but
Whatever.
I hear you.
I'm not saying we should go down burn down their White House. I'm just saying that if Trump really knew history, don't mess with Canada. You tried it once and you lost. I'm just saying. That's all I got to say. But that's awesome, Geoff. I think this was a good pod, man.
Yeah, I think it was important to have because I always tell people media always sells
Yeah.
sex and fear.
Yeah.
We are going to be hearing more about tariffs because, again, we're 14 days away from it,
Yeah.
right? So
And
we're going to hear more and more and more of it. And if you are educated in what a tariff is and what this means to Canada, you're just going to be that much more educated when you're having conversation with people that may not know what you now know.
that is it. Well, very well said. It is very important, people, to keep yourself educated and out of the disinformation space when it comes to these tariffs, when it comes to Trump's ability to annex Canada. Please, everybody, understand Donald Trump cannot annex Canada. Our leaders will not sell the United or Canada to the United States. God pray, I don't think they will. The only way that Trump can take over Canada is if he starts a war with his people. So again, don't get when you hear about this whole annex nonsense, just let Trump, it's just a bunch of stupid garbage coming out of a stupid man's face. That's just ignore it and really just stay educated. Continue to read, stay educated, stay out of the disinformation space. Don't listen to mainstream media.
And shop local.
Yes, and shop local. Everything Canadian, people. Shop local, support your people beside you. This is now what we do. This is now back to the lifestyle that we once lived. It's a beautiful life.
Alberta whiskey is better than Kentucky bourbon. So
Heck yeah. What, man, that's the thing. Like, I don't drink, but I will tell you, the United States, they don't even know how to make alcohol. Like their alcohol is always worse than every other country. They legitimately have the worst alcohol in every other country. So again, there's so many great things about us, right? And Crown Royal comes from Winnipeg, Manitoba, one of the best ryes in all of the rye world.
mm,
Listen,
mm,
everybody loves Crown. You don't like
mm,
Crown, Geoff? You're gonna have a
mm.
lot of angry Manitobans coming to your house, Geoff.
Hey, I've already set the tone with Mother Nature, right? So I might as well
Right?
leave it the same way.
Right? Awesome. Well, everybody, that is it for us. We thank you for sitting here with us on I was gonna say another lovely Wednesday, but it is Thursday. But we thank you for sitting through us and listening to us today. Again, Geoff and I hope we were of value to you guys. As always, that is our commitment. I say it again, for 2025, we are doubling down. And with all of the craziness going on, it is even that much more important to Geoff and I that we make sure that we are educate you to the best ability that we can, and we keep you out of that disinformation space, because that is a bad space to live in. So with that being said, please everybody have an amazing weekend. Love us, like us, share us, tell everybody you know about us, but most importantly, stay empowered, stay informed, and Geoff,
stay tuned.
Stay tuned. That was the 7-second delay. Absolutely amazing. People have an awesome weekend. We'll chat at you all next week. Peace out.
And we're going to get this technology figured out.
Right?
It might be. So, hey, it's going to get better. We're already good.
It's going to get better.
Gonna get better.
Bye, guys.